disruptive.
America that I fought for.
Weird thing to happen. Hello, one and all. Welcome to this edition of Kitz Corner. It's been a fantastic day so far. I have to show you this. This is back in 2017, but I want to re-highlight this to show you that even back then, before October 7th, before the supposed Hamas attacks and the horrific scene that we're seeing now, that Israel has been a huge influence since the formation of this settlement. And how much of an influence a foreign country is to the United States of America at the heat of the moment where people were pointing the finger at Russia for having the biggest influence on American elections. The whole time, we now understand, people are now understanding that it wasn't Russia, it wasn't China, it was actually Israel and Saudi Arabia the whole time that we kind of knew from the beginning that has the biggest influence on controlling the country because of this global Zionist movement, this global Zionist cult that has cultivated all these different nations to align themselves for big governance, big surveillance, big militarization, and the industrial war machine that catastrophically does humanitarian damages to other parts of the world. So this is kind of fascinating. So back in 2017, a Texas city refuses to give people hurricane aid unless they pledge not to boycott Israel. This came after Hurricane Harvey, the natural disaster that took a lot of Texas cities in damage, and they weren't allowed to get humanitarian aid through tax dollars that helps people in this nation unless they pledge their support for another nation. They're holding Americans hostage until they support their globalist agenda in support of Israel. This is back in 2017, before we knew anything about the horrific scene at the concert on October 7th, before any of this came out, before the college kids protests, all this was happening right in front of your eyes. The American Civil Liberties Union says an application form for flooding relief grants remissive McCarthy-era loyalty oaths. So, a Texas city devastated by flooding after Hurricane Harvey is forcing recipients of financial aid to sign a pledge not to boycott Israel. The American Civil Liberties Union, the ACLU, said the clause on Dickinson's city council application form from relief funding violated free speech rights and was reminiscent of McCarthy-era loyalty oaths requiring Americans to disavow communism. The city, 30 miles from Houston, was one of the areas hardest hit by Harvey. This week, Dickinson authorities began accepting applications from individuals and businesses for grants from money donated for hurricane aid. The form includes a clause headlined, verification not to boycott Israel. It states, by executing this agreement below, the applicant verifies that the applicant, 1, does not boycott Israel, and 2, will not boycott Israel during the term of this agreement. The city's attorney said he was following state law introduced in May, which prohibits public bodies giving contracts to companies that boycott Israel. But Andre Segura, the ACLU's legal director for Texas, says the First Amendment protects Americans' right to boycott, and the governments cannot condition hurricane relief or any other public benefit on a commitment to refrain from protected political expression. Dickinson's requirement is an egregious violation of the First Amendment, reminiscent of McCarthy-era loyalty oaths, requiring Americans to disavow membership in the Communist Party and other forms of subversive activity. So, it's literally fascinating, the analogy here, and just kind of the back and forth, kind of how this is lining up. So, while they have spent years in America trying to disavow people from the kind of Soviet-era communist regime and tried to disconnect people by saying you have to take pledges did not support, the communist revolution. You can't support Soviet measures, and that came into red baiting, that came into the Cold War, McCarthy era, that kind of scenario. While that was going on for years, this was the deep state insider back and forth within Israel that was actually hurting the nation more. Because now you have the formation of this alliance that's abnormal, that's insanely capturing the essence of American life and their own liberties, their own civil liberties, captured in support of this foreign land. That is a settlement created by the deep state. So it again, we've covered different stories about Israel and Gaza. We have covered, but the more you read into this, the more I think October 7th has really opened people's eyes. I think it's really exposed way much more than we already know about the formation of Israel and where this country, the settlement plays into Middle East territory and why they're so outrageously aggressive towards Palestinians. Now we're finding out more about this. We're finding so much more. The lid's finally coming off. The cat's out of the bag. And we are seeing so much more of how this formation of the settlement of Israel, posing itself as the holy land for Jewish and Christian civilians, is really just a front for the deep state's collective ideologue, the collective global war machine, to be the eyes and ears and control of Middle Eastern territories while we had control of America, and taking people for granted and stripping their freedoms and their constitutional rights from them. Just absolutely crazy. Like, we were trying to stop communism by basically being communists. We were trying to stop Soviet-era communism by going towards the direction of global fascism in the hands of Israel, United States, and other global empires. That's crazy. The ACLU said previous Supreme Court decisions had established the government could not require individuals to indicate political beliefs to obtain employment, contracts, or benefits. It said Dickinson's application form was unconstitutional. The city's attorney, David Olson, said the anti-boycott clause was required due to state law. He told ABC 13 the requirement would remain until someone tells them differently. Texas Governor Greg Abbott signed legislation requiring all state contractors to pledge not to boycott Israel earlier this year. As Israel's #1 trading partner in the United States, Texas is proud to reaffirm its support for the people of Israel, and we will continue to build on our historic partnership, he said in May. Anti-Israel policies are anti-Texas policies and will not be tolerated such actions against an important ally. Again, it's a business ally. That's the only reason, the only goddamn reason we have allies in this global fascist state. The only reason Israel and Saudi Arabia are a part of this, even though they are the most horrific no contributors to war crimes, to crimes against humanity, to the absurdity and the demise of civilization. The only reason we're in lockstep with them is for business practices. We make money off them. We make money off the death and disparity of other people. And of course, we're going to align ourselves with other nations that feel the exact same way. That's the only reason. Not that we care about Jewish people, not that we care about... It's nothing to do with any of that. The only reason the formation of Israel is it's all for business. It's all for the global empire elite to have a basically large military base in the Middle East, to be the eyes and ears of all these other territories, so we dismiss the rest of the world and gain global capture of everything, including this. So that was in 2017, folks. That was before October 7th. That was before people really saw the hindsight of how horrific our alliance is with Israel to do horrific war crimes, and so much so that it trenches against our freedoms, our liberties, our protected rights as individuals. And now here it is once again after October 7th, and so much so that the Prime Minister of Israel, Benjamin Netanyahu, the war criminal himself, is pledging that he is going after American college campuses to silence out their free speech. And in regard to do so, in regard to a foreign leader saying that, now the United States feels threatened that their business ally is pressuring them, and they have to send in the troops. They have to send in the cops to crack the heads of students protesting. And how ironic this all is in coming to the anniversary of the Kent State shooting. Again, this day is nothing more than metaphors. When you see stuff like this, and we're coming on the anniversary, I think it's, I don't know the exact number, but it happened in the 70s, so you can do the math. 2024 minus 1970. Of the day when people were protesting at Kent State against the Vietnam War, and the U.S. deep state, the security apparatus, the CIA, Homeland Security, the CIA, stormed into campus and shot down college students. And isn't it just amazing that we're just seeing history not repeat itself, but rhyme, as Mark Twain would say. Doesn't always repeat itself, but it often rhymes. And here's just a reminder of that. This is at the University of Texas. Look at this. It's like the stormtroopers coming off the Death Star. Look at all of them. Look at all of them. And when you see that at a Texas university, when there's that many troopers that are storming into a campus to crack down on people holding poster paper, and yet there is apparently no way to stop people flooding into this country, protecting the border. This is where your mind really opens to the fact that there is a reason why there's a border crisis. There's a reason why. It's not just a coincidence that we have people flooding into this country and there's no way to protect it. It's not a coincidence that we're going to these different nations to start warfare. It's not a coincidence that we would say we're protecting Jewish people by sending support for a genocide, but also supporting actual Nazis in Ukraine that decimate against Jewish people. It's not a coincidence. It's all planned out. And the fact that they have more state troopers storming into a college campus than they are protecting the border shows how much they give a shit about national security. How much they give a shit about any of your security. The fact that this is going around. We have over 1,000 military bases around the world. The United States does. Over 1,000 military bases around the world. And you're telling me that they can't find people to protect the border, to make sure that people legally are coming in and not the illegals? That we don't have a crime flow spewing in from our borders? That's complete bullshit. That's complete horseshit. And they did that purposely. They manufacture that purposely because their intent is to scare you. Their intent is fear-mongering. They don't want security because when people are happy and secure and healthy and prosperous, then they can't do anything. You're now a prosperous human being. You can actually live a normal human life and they can't exploit you anymore. So they have to keep you in perpetual fear. They have to keep you at bay. They have to jeopardize your security at every point in turn because it's harder to exploit people when they're happy and prosperous than it is to make them feel miserable, upset, oppressed, tugging at the emotional heartstrings and going after college kids is not helping security. It is not helping the notion of the country that you're storming on college kids and arresting them when we have actual criminals physically harming people on the regular and you aren't doing jack shit. That's when you realize we truly live in an upside down, bloated, criminal catastrophe clown world where we have psychotic, mass murdering mother effers that are at the helms in control of our daily lives and telling us how to feel secure by cracking down on college kids holding poster paper and allowing for criminal activity, illegal war catastrophes, genocides to continue on and plague humanity and jeopardizing our livelihoods every single day. And the fact that this is coming from Texas, nonetheless, I thought you're supposed to be the big guys, the rebels. Everything happens in Texas. We don't believe in other governments and globalism. And you come from the state that had Alex Jones. You have Alex Jones in your state, and yet somehow you're decimating your own civilians in support of another country's regime. Like, what has happened to you? What's happened to you, Texas? You used to be cool. Because this is just sad. And like I said, coming to the anniversary of the Kent State Massacre, history doesn't always repeat, but it does rhyme.